Hello, everyone, and welcome to the conversation. Happy Wednesday to each of you. My name is Yolanda Trotman, and I am your host of the conversation. And welcome to what is now segment 6 of the Indictment Series. And we have a very special episode tonight because now we are getting into our now what phase of this series. Because if you've been following this series when we started this 6 weeks ago, it was started after the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, and it was originally designed to just kind of talk about the criminal justice system in a very basic sense, and then it just evolved from there. So our very first episode, our very first segment of the series, we talked about the criminal justice system in a very basic on a very basic level, and we also talked about implicit bias. Our second segment, we dug a little bit deeper and we talked about the thin blue line. We talked about police reform. We talked about it from the perspective of two people who are retired from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, which were Charlotte Detective Keith Way and CMPD Assistant Chief Vicky Foster. And that discussion, we really dug deep into what the thin blue line really is all about, as well as what we could really do to affect change as far as demanding change for the police departments across the country. We then shifted and then talked to Sheriff Gary McFadden, and we talked about his personal story. From there, we certainly talked about two people, Arkevius Armstrong and Annalee Harden, who talked about their own personal stories of redemption. And we talked about their perspective of having been behind bars and what that experience was like, but also what we could do in terms of prison reform and reforming the criminal justice system from that perspective. And then, of course, last week, our show featured North Carolina Supreme Court Chief Justice Sherry Beasley. Talked with her one-on-one about her story, her very fascinating story, and her political journey to becoming appointed the first African-American Supreme Court Chief Justice. We talked about the status of the court system. We talked about what her vision was for evolving the court system. And then we talked about the intersection of race and the criminal justice system. And of course, she is on your ballot for November. So it is incredibly important that we support her. We have a virtual fundraiser that's coming up on July the 28th. I'm going to talk about that again as we get towards the end of the show. But we definitely have to work very hard to make sure that she remains our Chief Justice and that, of course, she wins in November. So tonight, our episode is really going to focus on the now what piece. We have talked about so many other things as far as the system, but now we're at a point of now what is it that we are going to do? What is it that we can do to really and truly affect change on the state level and on the local level? So I am very honored to have our two guests tonight to really talk about not just how government works, because that is very important to know, but also the things that we should be looking at and thinking about in terms of legislation, also in terms of what we can do between now and November, and of course beyond. So without further ado, I cannot wait for you to meet our first guest. I have known him, wow, I'm not sure how many years, because he's going to tell us officially, but I met him initially when he was when he began his career as an assistant public defender at the public defender's office here in Charlotte. Was immediately impressed by his work ethic and just how he spoke to his clients, how he represented his clients, and his story, his personal story and his story into politics is incredibly fascinating and inspiring, because he has made history in his own journey in becoming a North Carolina state senator. So I welcome to the show, everybody, put your virtual hands together and welcome Senator Mujtaba Mohammed to the conversation. Hello, sir. How are you, my dear?
Good evening, Judge Trotman. Thank you so much for having me. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well.
Well, it is my pleasure. For those of you tuning in, if you are catching me or catching this on the watch party, make sure that you drop in your comments. Obviously, if you're watching us on YouTube or if you're watching us on the conversation live, then you can drop your questions in your comments. This is definitely one of those shows where we welcome your questions, any questions that you have. So make sure that you drop them in the comments. And of course, send us a wave. Let us know that you're here. So let's get to it. So I want to talk about first who you are as a person. So tell us, and I don't want to get into too much detail because hopefully I can have you on for the actual pod studio show where we really get into your personal story as the world starts to open back up just a little bit. But let's talk about you. So where are you from originally, and how did you end up in Charlotte?
So, so let me just begin by my ethnic origin. So I'm Indian. My parents came to the United States in the late 70s. I was privileged enough to be born in this beautiful country, born in the great state of Ohio. Grew up in the
Mm-hmm.
Carolinas, though.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in Charlotte since high school.
Mm-hmm.
And Judge Trotman, you and I have a little bit in common because I know you used to teach at North Mecklenburg High School.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated from North Mecklenburg High School, so I'm a Viking.
Okay.
Went on to UNC Charlotte from there. I'm a proud Eagle, North Carolina Central University School of Law. Go Eagles! If anybody's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am now.
And so, when you left, was it your goal to come to Charlotte when you finished law school, or were you just kind of open in terms of where you wanted to go?
So I've always been passionate about public interest law, and I've done all my internships in public interest law. So I started out interning at the Durham Public Defender's Office
Mm-hmm.
with a gentleman named Philip Penn. If you know him or not, he used to be a Charlotte Mecklenburg Public Defender as well a couple of years back. Inspired me to get involved in juvenile cases and children's cases. So I actually started my legal career at the Council for Children's Rights, representing
Mm-hmm.
children and families.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day, out of the blue, Kevin Tiller, our chief public defender, reached out to me, said had an immediate vacancy that he needed to fill, and he wanted to know if I wanted to represent adults. So I figured, unfortunately, I would go ahead and follow some of my babies from the juvenile
Mm-hmm.
justice system into the adult criminal justice system. And the funny part is, Judge Trotman, for everybody out there that's listening, she swore me in as an assistant public defender. I don't know if she remembers it or not.
Vaguely.
It's one of those. Why I know she's not on the bench anymore. It's why I like to call her Judge Trotman, because as far as I've known her, she's always been Your Honor, Judge Trotman, and she swore me in as an assistant public defender. I'm so proud to still serve as an assistant public defender. I had to go part-time once I got elected to the North Carolina Senate, but I'm honored to still be in our courtrooms and on our courthouse serving you, the people.
And so when you started, well, let me ask you this, because this is always interesting when I talk to other attorneys. When you went to law school, did you know that you wanted to do public interest work, or did you have aspirations to do something else and you kind of found yourself through the process?
So I've always been passionate about criminal justice law. It's especially everything that's related to criminal defense issues. Never wanted to be a prosecutor. More power to those folks if they want to do it. But for me, it's always an interest in public interest law on the defense side. So that's why I was thankful to be a juvenile defender when I started out, representing a lot of those kids and families. And Philip Penn, who's a public defender who used to also work at the Council for Children's Rights, just put that
Mm-hmm.
inspiration in me. And I'm just so thankful that I got to come back to the city that I love, that has given me so much, Charlotte, after law school.
Mm-hmm.
I got married in law school. My wife fell in love with Durham when I
Mm-hmm.
was there in law school. So she was kind of hesitant about moving back. But hey, when you are just finishing law school and you're finding out that you're getting your first baby coming around, you got to move in with your family when you're still looking for work. So
Right.
thankfully, I had to move back with the fam. Council for Children's Rights literally called me the day my son was born. If you know
Oh,
Renee
wow.
Little,
Yeah.
our soon-to-be Judge Little. I think they had about 2-3 different interviews. Renee calls me the day my son was born to tell me, hey, Mr. Mohammed, we've got this opportunity at the Council for Children's Rights. Can you join? And I was like, well, Renee, I'm actually at the hospital. I just had a baby. She's like, well, do you need a week or two to start? I said, well, Renee, the wife's telling me go ahead and get started now because we need some income coming in to feed this baby and take care of this baby.
Mm-hmm.
So just been involved with Mecklenburg County Courthouse, a lot of our stakeholders ever since there, and love the place. Know so many great judges and attorneys at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. So it's a privilege.
Well, that has definitely been an interesting journey, I'm sure, starting out with Council for Children's Rights, because there's a very big learning curve and you have so much responsibility so very early on. For those of you just joining us, take an opportunity to also share the broadcast as well. Beverly, I see you. Good evening, sis. Lisa says she's a parent alum. And when did you graduate? Now I'm about to age myself. When did you graduate from North Mech?
2004.
Oh yeah.
Judge
It's
Trotman,
one of those questions you shouldn't ask because it's just gonna make you feel like really old. Yeah.
So I'm 35 right now. I'm also the youngest member of the North Carolina Senate elected. We've got
Yeah,
a
I didn't know
30-year-old
that.
coming on board that just got appointed, a Republican from Randolph County. But I'm the youngest elected state senator from North Carolina at
Fun
35.
fact. Well, that's okay.
So that's not
That's
too
okay.
young. I'm
That's
getting a little
okay.
grayer, folks, but
Well, it will have a tendency to age you. And definitely if you're joining us on the watch party, share it as well. Lonzel, Joe, Brian, all of you guys, I see you. So let's get into your road to, well, no. Let's stay there for a second. So you leave Council for Children's Rights and you decided to go to the Public Defender's Office. Was it a tough decision?
absolutely it was tough. Judge Trotman, I'm so thankful because a lot of attorneys do start out at public defender's offices across the country, but it was very special for me to start out representing children because the reality is you get to see where the story begins for so many of our clients. As you follow them as young as 6, 7, 8, 12 years old at times, and then you see them grown men and women and you're still representing them. And it tells you about the systematic issues that we have in our criminal justice system. It teaches you about the racism that we have in our criminal justice system and a lot of the gaps that we have. And for me, as a public defender and as a juvenile defender, oftentimes I would feel so frustrated. And you know this, Judge Trotman, because you used to be a public defender as well with Mecklenburg County Public Defender's Office. Yes, you're an attorney, you're having trials, you might just find out in the next 15, 20 minutes that you have one. Judge Trotman might deny your motion to continue, so you're boom, you gotta go. And that's just the exciting part about being a public defender. But the reality is oftentimes we're social workers in a way. And no dig to social workers because you've earned it. But at the Public Defender's Office here in Mecklenburg County, we have 63 lawyers and 2 social workers. And we serve a city of over 1 million people almost. So you've got to help folks when it comes to housing, substance abuse, mental health issues, a whole host of issues. And I believe that those skill sets that I developed at the Council for Children's Rights were a tremendous asset for me with representing adults in the criminal justice system. So it's interesting.
Yeah, when I was there, we didn't have social workers at all.
Look at that. Look at that.
and our caseloads were probably twice as large. Of course, we were at the old courthouse. So yeah, I remember my first day on my own, I had a trial, like on the fly. But those were the days where, and it was a very different, the bench was very different. I remember I lost it. I shouldn't have lost it. I was up all night doing this. I did a whole brief on why the verdict had to be set aside. Actually won the argument and it was set aside.
Of course he did.
But it was a larceny case. They could have technically recharged her the way that they did it because they didn't grant my motion to dismiss. I digress. But the point of all of that is that, the resources make it so difficult when we're navigating this system, particularly as attorneys, because back then, we didn't have social workers. So it was like the Judge McCoy Mitchells and those who really cared about the client would say, hey, I have a project for you and I need you to go find this and then go follow up. And so that's, we had to wear that hat as well.
And that's the thing. So you're talking about lack of resources. So, and that's the thing when you are a police officer, when you're a paramedic, when you are a prosecutor or a public defender or social worker, and our judges, you see this day in day out, the inequities that we have and the lack of resources. Just take our courts, for example. And for me, I felt like all I was doing oftentimes was buying time for people. And it was incredibly frustrating, especially when you see the same folks time and time again. And their real issues are about building people instead of building prisons. Like I talked about access to healthcare, housing, childcare, simple common sense things that are not Republican or Democratic, but common sense issues. And for me, I felt like I needed to step up to the plate because for me, I'm very fortunate that I know how to navigate and fight for my children. We've got 3 lovely children, Sab and I, Ayub who's 6, Hamza who's 4, and we have a 7-month-old baby girl. And I will tell you, both my wife and I, we will be pit bulls and we'll be in the corner of our children. But for so many kids across this great city and county and state, we don't have those advocates in their corners. And our state legislature controls the purse strings. Tremendous amounts of money that can be a tremendous asset to changing the community. And when I talk about building people instead of prisons, that's absolutely what we could do if we have budgets that reflect our values. So that's where I saw myself, and I'm thankful that the people of Senate District 38 gave me the opportunity to serve.
Absolutely. And so for those of you just joining us here with Mujtaba Mohammed, North Carolina State Senator, Mujtaba Mohammed, District 38, elected for the first time, up for re-election in November, but first time was elected in don't.
2018,
I
November
thought I was about
2018.
to say. I want to make sure, because I was there during the swearing in.
Yes,
Yay!
you were.
But I think the thing that most people don't know is, how did you decide to pivot into politics? What was it about politics that drew you in?
Um, Again, it's just, I mean, you have decision. First of all, let me tell you about the North Carolina House and the North Carolina Senate. Majority of the folks that are in representing you in state government, especially in the legislature, we have a part-time General Assembly, but the reality is full-time work. They pay you about $13,000 a year, so there's no money in it. So folks out there will sometimes think we're making six figures as your state legislators. We're not. I, in fact, went part-time to do this,
Mm-hmm.
but it's set up that way. So social workers, teachers, public defenders, people that are working with the community day in and day out are not there. It's almost like a club. A lot of the folks that I serve with are very independently wealthy, or they're married to a wealthy spouse, and in a lot of cases they're retired. So it's much more easier for you to do, because we're in Raleigh during the long session, anywhere from 6 to 9 months. I almost missed the birth of my daughter because we had to sustain Governor Cooper's veto back in November, because we have exactly 21 Democrats in the North Carolina Senate. And if one of us didn't show up, well, the state of North Carolina could potentially go to hell, unfortunately. So,
True.
so
True.
it's like, hey, do I disappoint my wife, or do I disappoint the people of North Carolina? But thankfully, my daughter Amara was pretty smart, and she came on Veterans Day. So the Republicans couldn't pull a fast one on us. So I got to be there for her birth. But that's the type of situation we're in. And they make a lot of decisions that impact us day in, day out. When we're talking about public education, for example, the thing that separates the state of North Carolina from so many other states is that we have a constitutional mandate and a moral obligation to make sure that we provide a sound basic education for every child. There's a nonpartisan report out right now. We've got to make up anywhere from $7 to $8 billion in adequate education funding over the next 7 to 8 years to make sure that our children are receiving a sound basic education. So when we're failing our kids in our public schools, you're going to see more people standing next to assistant public defender Mujtaba Mohammed in an orange jumpsuit, and that's the problem. So I'm passionate to be a voice for folks in the courtroom, in the committee room of the North Carolina Senate, and even on the floor about issues that impact us every day.
And so, in your experience, being both at the Council for Children's Rights and at the Public Defender's Office, what was probably the most compelling thing that you saw that really emphasized the fact that we truly have a school to prison pipeline in North Carolina and across the country?
Well, if you look at the numbers, Judge Trotman, and you know this, I don't need to tell you. If we look at for example, our school suspension rates. So African Americans, for example, make up almost 22% of the state of North Carolina, but yet we make up 60% of our state jail and prison population. And that closely parallels our school suspension rates. So African Americans make up about 25% of our school suspensions, yet they're almost 50 to 60%. That tells you and shows you that the school and prison pipeline is happening in our various schools. And that's why a lot of our kids are being pushed out of our classrooms into jail cells. When you and I were growing up, at least when I was at Northmac, I don't remember kids being sent to the courtroom and being charged with criminal charges for minor things. But now we're quickly sending them, and that is opening them up to a whole new world where they're meeting new people that they shouldn't meet. And we can do better. And that's my thing. If we spent the resources appropriately on education, access to healthcare, in our neighborhoods, mental health care, we can make sure we bring down our prison populations.
And do you think that because of that, because I know when I started off at the Public Defender's Office, we were like, what is an affray? Like, why are kids being charged with what, we would do as a kid, meet me outside at 3:00 and we gonna fight it out, but now you're going to jail? Or the numbers that are very true and very, very, very true that, how all of this increased when we started putting school resource officers in, which was a good idea in theory, but then now we're criminalizing behavior of kids, which is what kids do. So
and that's the thing. The school resource officers started after Columbine, after we saw massive school shootings across the country to keep our kids safe. But the unfortunate circumstances, a lot of times these school resource officers are helping push that school to prison pipeline. There's a lot of things that can be handled amongst parents and children, but the unjust part that makes me really upset, Judge Trotman, is oftentimes when I represented kids in poverty, or we are prioritizing simple affrays, minor assaults, minor drug charges. But you look at more affluent parts of Mecklenburg County, in places like South Charlotte and Ballantyne, where kids
Mm-hmm.
have a substance abuse problem just as much, but those kids are getting treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Those kids are being diverted. But for the black and brown children, we're sending them to our courtrooms. We're
Right.
sending them through our criminal justice system, and that is the type of inequity that is just incredibly unjust, and we've got to do better. Which is why I'm so thankful in 2018 that this legislature finally, we're one of the last states who decided to step up to the plate and stop treating black and brown children, especially like monsters. 16 and 17-year-olds finally got raised the age where we can keep our young people in the juvenile justice system so they can avoid an adult criminal charge that will scar them for the rest of their life.
And that was a great victory. What, if anything, do you see that the legislature needs to do in terms of adequate funding to make
Oh,
sure that
that's
we're putting ourselves in situations where we're not just raising age, but we have nowhere to put kids in various counties?
So that's obviously a significant issue. We still need a lot more court counselors, social workers. We need more district attorneys, more juvenile defenders. So that's an issue that this General Assembly is going to have to continue to address. We've allocated some funding, but at the end of the day, I don't know if folks have been following. North Carolina still doesn't have a budget. We've passed many bills to get things like raise the age going, which started, but there's still a lot more to do. But those budget debates have come down to expansion of healthcare. Medicaid expansion is something that North Carolina has refused to do. Comes down to how much we're going to pay our teachers, where folks don't want to do that. Folks wanting to prioritize corporate tax cuts instead of funding
Mhm.
adequately our juvenile justice system. So there's still a lot more to be done, but I will tell you that was a bipartisan effort. So yes, there's a lot of doom and gloom that I can share with you, Judge Trotman, about what
Mhm.
happens in the North Carolina Senate and why in 2020 the folks that are listening today can make a genuine change. But thankfully, there have been opportunities of bipartisan support, like the Second Chance Act, which is huge. You're an
Mhm.
attorney,
For people
you
who don't
know
know
it.
what that is, what is that?
Yeah. So the Second Chance Act, folks, the reality is you shouldn't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a second chance at life. So the Second Chance Act will basically automate and modernize our court system by allowing folks to get automatic expungements when their criminal charges have been dismissed, either through a district attorney or a judge or a jury finding them not guilty. It also reduces the number of years when you can ask for expungement. So that's a huge win, because
Mhm.
otherwise a lot of folks would be out there spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of their own money. And again, it's for the haves and the have-nots, and that's the problem with the criminal justice system. When we look at things like money bail, when we look in the courtroom, when there's an attorney wearing a $3,000 suit, and then you have an assistant public defender who's got this couple $100 suit on, but hundreds of files on him and representing so many clients as we can. It's an unjust system that we've got set up.
Mhm.
So we can do better, and it starts with our state meeting those responsibilities to adequately fund those types of needs.
So when you first joined the General Assembly, and for people who may not know the structure, I mean, there's state senators, there's state representatives, and then obvious. Well, you know what? No, because I don't want to assume that anybody that's watching knows the difference. So, so if you can give us an idea of the difference in terms, is it just like the United States Congress where you have Senate and it
Sure.
flows the same way? But just give us a quick high level overview of what and how the General Assembly is organized.
Sure. Sure. We've all spent time in civics and in our social studies classes studying our federal government, the three branches of government. So our state government is very similar. You have the governor, who's our chief executive, almost similar to the president. Then you have our legislature, and in North Carolina, we've got the upper chamber, which is the North Carolina Senate. You have 50 state senators across the state of North Carolina. I happen to be one of them, and then you have 120 House representatives across the state of North Carolina, and we're the lawmaking body. And then, of course, we have our courts, whether it's our Supreme Court down to our district courts. So we have those three branches of government. And I'm so thankful to so many of our judges in our courts as well, because this General Assembly has been so reckless over the last decade. Thankfully, our courts have stepped in time and time again to make sure that those checks and balances are there, and told this General Assembly to do better when it comes to voting, when it comes to criminal justice, when it comes to the Racial Justice Act, and a whole host of other issues.
And so, a couple of things I want to touch on, and I see a couple of questions I'm going to pose to you in just a second. What do you think was one of the biggest things that the Republican-controlled Senate rolled back that probably had the biggest impact on the criminal justice system? I would probably say
So,
racial. Well, anyway, go ahead. What you think?
so absolutely, the Racial Justice Act, you know, where folks can basically appear their cases when they believe that um, race had an issue in their case. And unfortunately, this General Assembly rolled that back. Our courts have struck that, thankfully, have come to the rescue. But there's a whole host of issues. I mean, simple common sense things like we were talking to our mayor and our city council folks, the city council delegation, just even recently, when it comes to body cam footage. Right now, it's almost like a poll tax. Folks
Mm-hmm.
have to go to a Superior Court judge to get access to body cam footage. That's ridiculous. The reality is, you know, Judge Trotman, when you go into a courtroom, it could be like a lion's den for somebody who's never been there.
Right.
I remember my first time going into a courtroom when just coming fresh out of law school. I mean, it can be an intimidating place. So imagine somebody that can't navigate the court system, who doesn't know what to do, what forms to fill out. Now you've got to go find an attorney or figure out how to do this paperwork. It's difficult for folks, and we can do better by making sure that those videos are easily accessible, because our city council couldn't even see it. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of reforms that we definitely need to make in our criminal justice system. I wish we could have done stuff like ban the box. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely no reason why we should be looking at people's criminal records when it comes to something that is completely unrelated to their job. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
these are basic common sense jobs bills. One thing that I'm proud to tell you, Judge Trotman, is I'm a proud sponsor of a bill to finally end criminalizing poverty when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
our criminal justice system. Time and time again, you've seen attorneys come before you and so many other judges, and you've done this yourself. We're asking judges to excuse fines and fees.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that this General Assembly has done. We're literally building this economy on the backs of working families, because we've cut corporate taxes down to 2.5%, while we've raised middle class taxes, while we've raised taxes for middle class families, while we've increased fines and fees for our DMV and our courtrooms. And now people are getting fines and fees when they are getting traffic tickets or been convicted of a criminal charge. And if they can't pay it, they lose their driver's licenses.
Mm-hmm.
Then they lose their jobs. Then they lose their housing. These are common sense bills that we could pass to make sure that folks can keep their jobs and have an opportunity.
So what's it going to take? Because obviously we know we have an election coming up in November, and obviously it's a critical election from the top to the bottom of the ballot. But what is it that people can do to start to even make impact with their own senator, with their own legislator, to with their own representative rather, to start to affect change and to make their voices heard?
Folks, I want to tell you, for the people that are listening out there, November 3rd, 2020 is around the corner, and COVID-19 is happening. There's a lot going on in people's lives. I know folks have lost their housing. They potentially lost their jobs. But 2020 is going to determine our future for the next decade in the state of North Carolina. If you care
Mm,
about access to health care, where we have 1 million people uninsured in this state, shame on us. If you care about criminal justice reform, true criminal justice reform, access to body cam footage, making sure that we're giving folks genuine second chances when it comes to criminal justice. If you care about the funding of our public education system, if you care about our water and air, then you got to step up and vote. You've got to be able to fundraise for quality candidates that you care about.
mhm,
Support them. You got to be able to phone bank, because right now in the North Carolina Senate, we need 4 more seats and the lieutenant governor to flip it. In 2018, because of your belief in justice, equity, and our state's well-being, we broke that Republican supermajority, and we've been able to stop every single dangerous bill that Governor Cooper has vetoed through this Republican General Assembly. And it's been great, but it's still tough to move our state forward. A lot of the bills that I talked to you about, that I've sponsored, that I want to push forward, the reality is the Republicans don't let those bills see the light of day.
mhm,
So if we're going to bring change all the way from the White House down to our state house, I need you to roll up your sleeves. I need you to spend your money. I need you to make phone calls. I need you to talk to your neighbors. I need you to talk to your friends. They have got to vote. Governor Cooper in 2016 won by 10,000 votes.
that's
If
it.
we lose him, that's it. And if we lose him as governor and we get someone like Dan Forrest, it is going to be an absolute nightmare. Justice Beasley, our first African American Chief Justice, we've got to keep her there. Folks are coming for her and they're targeting her. Make sure you send her back to the bench. When it comes to our state legislative races, we have so many competitive races. We need 6 seats in the House, 4 in the Senate. If we do that, then we have a legislative agenda we'll have a budget that reflects your values and mine, and the people can finally be put first. But it's not going to happen if you take it easy and continue to watch Netflix and hang out at home during COVID-19. So roll up your sleeves and get to work.
Absolutely. And we can't stress out enough those numbers. 6 House seats, that's it. They need to flip.
6 House.
4 state Senate seats that need to flip in order for us to be able to affect change for sure. And again, that the governor's mansion is so incredibly important. And you told us 10,000 votes. That's it.
10,000 votes.
That is
Judge,
it.
let me just add one more thing, real folks. In 2008, President Obama won, and we had thought we came to the kingdom, everything was going to be great.
Right.
The Republican majority took over in 2010 because we fell asleep at the wheel. And for the last 10 years, they have been utterly destroying our state. So this is your chance, because redistricting is coming back. Many of you got your census in the mail. Make sure you complete it, because that's going to determine your legislative seats, our new maps. That's going to determine our allocation and the funding for our congressional representation. So if you care about the next 10 years of this state, 2020 is that election in November.
Absolutely.
So do your part.
Question from Tim Porterfield. You talked about second chances, the automatic expunction that just passed, hopefully will be completely funded and remain funded. But what about a second expungement? Is that an option, or it could be an expungement for different categories of offenses?
So this will basically, so I can just kind of read from the bill a little bit. Basically, you'll be able to, if things are automatically dismissed, then those will be automatically expunged and moved from your record. But you will have to petition the court still for previous criminal charges to get those expungements. It says if all charges are dismissed, the court will order expungement. And if some of the charges are dismissed, the court may order an expungement effective December 1st, 2020. But those petitions still have to be filed in court. So you will be able to get more than one, but you're gonna have to file a lot of those through the courts still.
Okay, but after that, it will be automatic.
Yes, if your cases have been dismissed, which is automatic, and that's a huge win, folks. Again, if I was in the majority and if we could have it all, we would absolutely do it to make it much more easier. But the reality is, with some of these bipartisan bills, you have to take a little bit and you have to give a little bit. So right now, at least we have automatic expungements when your cases have been dismissed.
Excellent. And so when you are talking or when you're thinking about the legislature from the perspective of what it is that you need to do and how you actually interact in a way that is hopefully bipartisan, do you find that is how we perceive it on television, that people just are, if it's going to be what it is, and it's very difficult for there to be any movement in any way, shape, or form? Is the perception that we see on the media correct, or not so much?
So what I will tell you, this president has thrown political correctness, basic decency out of the window, and it's absolutely frustrating. And that's the importance, right? Yes, the president's there, but the reality is the president sets the tone. So you do have a lot of folks that are out there saying it's my way or the highway. Now, I'm fortunate to be a lawyer, and the reality is, as an attorney, you're always trained to think both sides of the issues. So in committees like the Judiciary Committee that I sit on, it's a great committee that's got a lot more attorneys on there. So you can work across the aisle with a lot of attorneys that happen to be Republican to get them to see the light of day. Okay. We've had a number of bills that we've been able to get rid of or amend or fix because they were terrible bills in places like Judiciary. But at the same time, like bills like House Bill 370, which targeted all of our African American sheriffs for removal if they didn't.
Wait, people don't know about that. People don't know about that. We got to talk about that. We got to talk about that.
So if I just didn't know how much time we had. So a lot of the urban cities across North Carolina, I believe at least 7 or 8, we elected Black sheriffs, which was huge, fantastic. We had our very own Sheriff Gary McFadden elected, and a lot of these sheriffs were elected because of the enforcement of ICE. Basically, when you were being arrested, the jail would ask you about your immigration status. And I am not sure why they would necessarily do that. Just because you're undocumented doesn't make you more or less dangerous.
Right.
So, so just because I happen to be from the country of Mexico doesn't make me any more dangerous than anybody that's born and raised in this country. But the reality is they were using our sheriff and our local county resources to enforce immigration laws. And oftentimes a judge like Judge Trotman might unsecure a bond, and these folks are still sitting in jail waiting for ICE to pick them up. So our sheriffs like Gary McFadden, thought that was wrong. So that made a lot of Republicans very angry in the North Carolina legislature. So partisan issue to make it an election year issue, so they can run ads, so they can say, hey, we're letting in the drug cartels, the rapists, just like this president talks about. Basically more scare tactics. They pushed House Bill 370. Thankfully, Governor Cooper vetoed it, but it was a community effort because the Sheriff's Association ended up supporting that bill. But thankfully, we had a lot of great sheriffs, like our very own Sheriff McFadden, the Sheriff of Durham, the Sheriff of Wake, who stepped up, sheriffs of color, who stepped up and said, no, this is wrong. We're not going to enforce federal immigration law in our county jails. ICE, you do that. That's their mandate. That's their job. Why do we need to use our county resources to do that? So I applaud our sheriffs for doing that. So this bill basically targeted those sheriffs where a person from their county could petition a judge to have them removed from a public office. Now, these are duly elected officials.
Get out of here now. Wait. Say that again, because I didn't even know that. Wait, I'm sorry. My mind. I think my mind exploded a little bit on the left. Say that again.
So basically, you would be able to petition judges to remove sheriffs from public office for not enforcing federal immigration law, which is ridiculous. So thankfully, again, that bill was vetoed. It has not come back up for a veto override. But I will tell you, Judge Trotman, I heard from a lot of Republican legislators, and they laughed about it. They said this was one of those things that we wanted to run against Cooper. This is one of those bills that we wanted to run against some of your vulnerable members, so they can use those fear and scare tactics of Black and brown folks. Everything that we see on the evening news, where it's something that's not common. So it's unfortunate, but you might be getting some mail. You might see some attack ads soon where people of color are shown to be monsters because of immigration. But I can tell you, as a child of immigrant parents, look, my parents came here for opportunity. And the reality is so many folks in Senate District 38 don't have the same opportunities that my family and I had. So I'm going to make sure I do everything I can to make sure that all of you get economic justice in the North Carolina Senate. Justice at the ballot box, justice when it comes to access to healthcare in our schools, and true, real criminal justice reforms.
And so, fun fact question: first day in first session, what was that like? Do you remember the first thing you voted on?
So I do remember one of the first things that I voted on, but what they do in the North Carolina Senate, Judge Trotman, is they make the Democrats sit in the back row. So
stop it. Stop.
They do, guys.
Are you serious?
They make all of us sit in the back row. So we're sitting in the back row. Again, your bills don't see much traction if you happen to be a Democrat. Oftentimes your bills are killed.
Wow.
The reality is sometimes your bills can pass. And the sad part is that's when backroom deals are made. And for someone like me, Senate District 38, I don't know if the folks want to get out there and research. I'm not somebody that's going to compromise on some of my values and principles to get certain things done. I'm true to who I am. I'm not going to let special interests dictate my values or PAC money dictate my values. So I'm going to continue to do what I can. And for me, I'm going to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to change these policymakers so we get more like-minded individuals in 2020. That's what I was working on earlier today. That's what we've been working on for months. But one of the first bills that they had us vote for, I believe, was a female genital mutilation bill, Judge Trotman.
Wait. I'm sorry. You can't just
these social issues. These social issues, Judge Trotman, they happen. Supposedly, some legislators believe
what? Somebody wrote a bill
to ban female genital mutilation.
Is that a thing? That
it's not. It's not a thing, but it's one of those social issues that we continue to unfortunately focus on in our state. So I believe that was one of the first bills. God, there's been so many bills now, but I remember that was one of the most prominent bills that first stuck out at me from the very beginning. But it's unfortunate. People play politics.
You still have to sit in the back row?
we still sit in the back row, Judge Trotman. So, but I'm hoping. I've been talking to leadership in my own caucus about this.
I just can't even. I can't. Okay.
But here's the thing, Judge Trotman. This is what I will tell you. When I'm looking at the back row, and our Senate Minority Leader, Jay Chaudhry, talks about this a lot, and I look around that room. When I look around the North Carolina Senate, in the front of me, all you see is a lot old white men. You see very few women. You see very few people of color. But when I look around my back row of Senate Democrats, I see people of different faiths. I see women. I see women of color. I see younger folks. I see older folks. So we are a diverse bench in the North Carolina Senate, and even in the North Carolina House, which gives me a lot of hope for the future. Because we've got a lot of energy. We're the younger bunch, excited bunch. We've got energy. We're motivated to bring about change. And if you give us the opportunity in 2020, if you give us the gavel, we're excited to bring change, especially this next decade to North Carolina.
Perfect segue. So I'm going to ask you to stick around because I want to talk with you and our next guest together as we kind of wrap up and talk about what's coming up in November and what we really need to do now. In the meantime, for those of you who just tuned in, if you have questions or comments, drop them in the comments. They can reach you. If anybody needs to reach you, they can reach you at mujtaba.mohammed@ncleg, or which is NC Legislature.net if they have questions for you or if they need to reach out to you. Also very important, if you don't know who your state senator or who your state representative is, probably the fastest way is to go to MEC BOE, which is a board of elections. And if you go to MEC BO and put in your information, it'll show you who your legislator is, both on the House side and on the Senate side. So because you need to know obviously who that person is, and when you come back with us, we'll talk about the best way to start, even if it's not traditional lobbying, like how you can reach out, how you can galvanize support to push and make effective change as it relates to state law. So thank you so much, but we will see you in a bit. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So our next guest coming up doesn't really, I don't even know if anybody calls him by his government name much. I guess it's probably on his if you know him for real, I guess you got to call him by his government name, but everybody calls him by his nickname. And has an equally fascinating story in terms of how he became involved in politics. But we are going to talk about that story, but we're very specifically going to talk about how we can affect change here in Charlotte, and especially in such a time as this. So welcome to the show, James Smudgy Mitchell. How you doing?
Yolanda? What's up, sis?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm feeling fine. Now you told me now the ground rules were we're gonna have real conversation, right? So we're gonna drop titles and we're gonna act like we're in the living room, right?
Right.
Okay.
So, but first question: where did Smudgy come from? Because I know that's got to be the first question that everybody asked you.
And you're right. So my uncle, when I was 3 years old, my uncle and my father used to go play golf almost every other day. He used to come over to the house. And he used to look at me sitting up there in the baby carriage with Gerber baby food all over my face, the peaches, the squash. And he said, boy, his face is always dirty. So that's why he gave me the nickname Smudgy ever since I was 3 years old. And now, 55 years later, it's still Smudgy.
And so, but that's interesting. Well, one is an interesting nickname, but the fact that you allowed it to stick into adulthood, was it just who you were, or just how people knew?
It became, to your point, Yolanda. I mean, my teachers called me Smudgy. Principal called me Smudgy. I remember my college sweetheart at the time, we had to sign your name when you're about to graduate, and I put James Smudgy. I put James Mitchell. She nudged me. She said, "Stop being fun and put your real name." I'm like, "You've been dating me for 3 years, and you don't know my government name?" She was like, "I just hear Smudgy." And so it's an affection. I would tell you a funny story. So first time I ran for office, 1999, we flew in this consultant from Washington, D.C. And you know how consultants are, all proper and like, well, let's look at your profile and let's talk about your advantages and disadvantages. And by the way, we're getting rid of that nickname because nobody's going to vote for Smudgy. my mother, bless her soul, leaned over to me. She said, "Baby, how much are you paying her?" I said, "Mom, about $1,500. My mama took her checkbook out, wrote the check for $1,500, told me to give it to that Washington consultant, say she's fired. If you can't use Smudgy.
And there it is.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
Now, where are you from originally?
Oh, no, come on.
I had to ask.
Oh, I'm
Smudgy
sorry.
people might not know.
Oh, okay. So,
okay.
Okay. But please, so if viewers out there who know me for the first time, I just have a lot of energy. So it's hard for me today. All proper with a necktie. So I'm going to act like my normal self. Charlotte, North Carolina is home. Been here all my life, except for about 4 years. I went to Canton, Ohio. So graduated from Stage 4 Elementary. I'm going to go way back. Stage 4 Elementary, Ransom Middle School. Then went to the baddest high school in Charlotte, Dub C, you know. Left Dub C. Then I went to that HBCU school in Durham called North Carolina Central. Got the Eagles out there.
Yeah.
And left there, graduated with a computer science degree. And then went to Canton, Ohio. First job out of college took me to GE in Canton, Ohio. Oh, did I mention when I was at North Carolina Central, I pledged Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
Ooh, yeah. I was going. Okay. Because this is regular Smudgy, regular yo. Okay. All right. So do you start in corporate America?
I did. I was a computer programmer for 5 years for GE. Yolanda, honestly, the snow got the best of me in Canton, Ohio, because I was a Southern boy. So 1989, I moved back to Charlotte, and I stayed in computer programming to about 2005. Then I just got burnt out, and then I switched over to sales. So I've been doing sales now since about 2005 when I made a career change.
And so was it a tough transition moving from corporate to moving to sales?
It was for me because, on the corporate side, it was about technology and learning, staying ahead of the game. And then on the sales side, it came more about relationship building, learning how to play golf, knowing how to have the business acumen. And so it was a change for me, but it fit my personality more. I'm a people person. And so only thing I didn't like about being a computer programmer, you just stayed at a machine 24/7 and you didn't interact that much with the customer. So sales fit me better. And I have to thank Ray Kennedy, American product distributor, Black-owned company. In 2005, I convinced Ray to be the steering committee of the CIAA basketball tournament. And during our conversation, a wrap-up meeting, I said, "Mr. Kennedy, have you thought about selling paper products to government entities?" And he said, "Smudgy, no, because nobody has the relationships." I said, "Well, how about hiring me?" And he said, "What?" I said, "Yeah." Because one thing, Yolanda, also, I got elected in 1999, and so my city council responsibility was growing even more. I was taking on more committee assignments, getting in the leadership role, so it was becoming more time-consuming. And when you're a computer programmer, you had to stay at that desk 8 to 5. So sales gave me that flexibility I need to do both city council work and earn a paycheck. Because, I don't know why people get out. We don't get paid as elected officials. So you have to keep a real job.
Indeed. So for those of you who are just joining us on this part of the show, you please feel free to ask questions, to drop those in the comments. If you're watching from the watch party, you can drop them in the comments as well. I'll see them. Send us a wave, of course. So let's get to your journey in terms of getting into politics. And then I want to just kind of talk about how city government is organized, because I think some of the mistakes I think people make when they're trying to figure out where change happens in Charlotte is understanding our somewhat unique form of government in terms of manager council form. But we'll get to that in a second. So at some point, you said 1999, you decided that you wanted to get into politics. Why? Because Mujtaba told us he makes $13,000. Like, so you're not in it for the money.
You're not in it for the money. So, Yolanda, my journey really started about 1995. So when I got back in 1989, I saw an organization called Save the Seed. It was African-American spiritual young men becoming mentors to students, African-American students who CMS said were troubling students. And this organization was founded by Ron Leeper. And so I got involved and worked being a mentor. So one day, like in 1995, Mr. Leeper called me to his office. He said, "Hey, Smudgie, you know, your heart's in the right place. Have you ever thought about running for office?" Yolanda, I looked him dead in his eyes. I said, "Mr. Leeper, I don't want to be a crook." He was like, he said, "Well, if we don't have good people like you who really want to serve this community, we will continue to have crooks to serve." And so from 1997, Yolanda, to 1999, once a month, we would have lunch to talk about integrity, talking about honesty, talking about ethics, how you serve, how you stay humble, humility. It's not about you and your title. It's about improving the quality of life of those who vote for you. And so it was a great 2 years for me to sit down and to absorb all that wisdom. And I tell everybody, all you listeners, to get ahead, you do need to have a mentor, somebody in your life that can guide you. And so that's why I've been so fortunate. So, Yolanda, in 1999, I take it back. I was going to run in 1997. I was staying in District 5. When I moved back in 1989, I stayed off Elmore Road.
That's when Elmore Road was the bomb, though.
It was the bomb.
Not to throw shade, not to throw shade. I'm just saying, East Side was the side. And people who aren't from here, like, it's like, child, nobody went uptown. Trade and Trine was where you could get shot or get weed, like one or the other. But West Side was the bomb. Oh my God. Krispy Kreme, ice skating.
Oh, you love to see Red Lobster.
What, man?
Black Eyed Peas. You remember the restaurant?
Listen, sir.
So I'm taking you back down memory lane, huh?
Those were the days. Those were the days.
1997, I was going to run for office. And at that same time, Yolanda, my first blessing was born. Kayla Mitchell, my oldest daughter, was born. And I had to make a decision. Do I want to run for office now, or I'm going to stay and be a dad? And so I decided in 1999, I was going to move back to Batesford Road where I was raised. And so someone told me, "So your mama can vote for you." And I said, "What you mean?" They're like, "Don't you know why Congressman Mel Ward has been so successful? His mother's on the poll voting for him. And your mama's on Batesford Road. You need to move back to Batesford Road." So I moved back to District 2 and I ran for office. But Yolanda, during the journey, you know, old school told you to be prepared before the opportunity. Right. So I went through Civic 101. I was in the first class. I graduated from Focus on Leadership, the African American Leadership Program at John C. Smith. I graduated from Leadership Charlotte. I graduated from North Carolina Institute of Political Leadership. Then once I got elected, a couple of years later, I graduated from Harvard, John F. Kennedy School of Government. And I say that to your listeners, say, be prepared for the opportunity. And so people are confident that you're going to lead them in the right way.
Right. And so once you were in District 2, how many terms were you elected in District 2 before you decided to go at large?
Now you're going to make me sound like I'm old. So I did.
Hey.
No, it's all good, because I got to thank the voters for having confidence in me. So I served 14 years as a District 2 representative from 1999 to 2013. Ran for mayor in 2013, was not successful, took 2 years off. And then the community said, "Hey, Smudgie, we would love to have you back, but once you run at large." And I talked to Al Alston about running in District 2. And Al is one of my mentees, and Al did. And so I ran at large. I think it's a different mindset being a district rep. You the grunt. You get the cat out of the tree. You pick up the garbage can. You fill in the pothole. You know, and after 14
keep it real. Keep it real.
I'm telling you, we have a real conversation, right? Yolanda, after 14 years, I was ready to do the policy work. And that is, how do I improve access to capital? How do I create a program for minority women-owned business to thrive? How do I work on affordable housing? How do I put money in corridors? And so now, as a large rep, I focus more on policy. And then how do we recruit another HBCU football classic game to Charlotte now that we left the CIAA? But I ain't going there. You told me to stay positive. That's one of the worst decisions I've ever been part of in 20 years.
Okay.
So anyway, we're gonna stay positive.
We are, but I see a comment from Reese, hey sis, that I think is really important because she was talking, she made a comment that how it was important that you invested in your future and your education.
Yes.
Well before you decided to get into politics. Do you think that that was a game changer for you? Or do you think that's not necessarily required if you decide that that's something that you want to do? And I'll talk with you both about that a little bit later on. But
I think that's a game changer, Yolanda. To me, being a leadership role, it is a serious commitment. People are trusting in you, your ability to lead them, to ability to make change. And my frustration is some people now think they're a leader based on how many friends they have on social media. That's not leadership.
You better tell that. You better tell that. You better tell that and leave that right there. Right there. Right there. Okay, go.
And so I like the comment. And so Yolanda, now I'm in my mode of giving back. I don't know how long I'm gonna serve on city council, but I found it next level leadership. And next level leadership is by developing not the next political leaders of our community, but develop the next community leaders for Charlotte from an African American perspective. Because now it's time for me to pass the baton to leaders in the community. We just had class one. You know, a good person of mine, Travis B. Jackson. Travis graduated from the class. We had Yolanda Victoria Watlington in the class. Now we have class 2 that's going on. And so that's my passion now, Yolanda, is pass the baton. So prepare yourself for the opportunity. I will give everyone that nugget of wisdom.
So let's talk about the breakdown of how city government works here.
Okay.
We have a manager, council form of government. What does that mean in layman's terms?
So that means you have about 12 people who represent you on city council. And we have a weak form of government, to your point, Yolanda. Therefore, the city manager is really in control. The mayor does not have a vote, but she is the spokesperson for the city of Charlotte. You have 7 districts rep. And Yolanda, a lot of people don't realize we didn't get district representation until 1977. Before then,
wow.
So before then, you had everybody went to Mars Park Presbyterian Church on city council. They were all Caucasian, and was 5 of them. It was Ron Leeper and Sam Smith who said, Charlotte is growing now, and we need different voices at the table. So now we have 7 district reps, 4 at-large representative, and the mayor, total of 12.
And so what's the role of the mayor pro tem?
So the mayor pro tem is, in this case, Julie Iso. She, when the mayor is not present to oversee the meetings, she's there to facilitate the meetings and carry on the meetings. And the mayor pro tem as well is kind of responsible for making sure all council objectives and voices are recorded. So the mayor might say, hey, we're about to do 8 can't wait police reform. She will ask the mayor pro tem, can you get a feel where's council at on this issue? And so the mayor pro tem is usually goes to the top vote getter, and Julie Iso has been the top vote getter for the last 2 years.
And by top vote getter, you mean the top vote getter in the at-large race,
Correct.
Not obviously on the district race, for people who may not know that. That being said, what is the thing that you think that is most important for people to know when they're thinking about, okay, we need to do something, whether it's police reform or whatever, and understanding how really city government works? Because before you answer that, I think the biggest frustration I think people have, even with our current mayor, is visibility and things of that nature, but not understanding that's not where the power is. You're a spokesperson for the city, but the power does not lie with the mayor. The power lies collectively with city council, but whoever that top vote getter has even more power in terms of kind of navigating where things go. So that's why the elections are so important, and that's why the at-large races are so super critical. Now, with that being said, what do you think the biggest thing that people need to know in terms of, okay, you want to do something regarding police reform, for example, and we, what was passed before, we gonna talk about that. What we passed as far as 8 reforms, but now we need to dig deeper. Who is it that people need to focus on? Is it their district person? Is it their at-large person? Like, who is it that they need to target in terms of sending emails, making calls, putting that pressure on?
So Yolanda, you're exactly right. It starts with a district person first, so they need to know the district representative. If they do not know, you have my email. If they email it to me with their home address, I can tell them who their district representative is. Then it's their large representative. Please call me any concern, particularly with police, because I'm the vice chair on the safety committee. And then I will say, then it is the members of the safety committee. The chair is Larkin. I am the vice chair. Renee Johnson, District 4 is a member. Dimple Ashmere at large is a member, and Victoria Watlington, District 3. You should know us, the 5 of us, like the back of your hand. We are the 5 you need to call, you need to engage, you need to email. And so we're going to start what we call Reimagine Our Police. So starting on tomorrow, Thursday, 3 o'clock, we have about 12 citizens in a citizen input group. And they're going to start the dialogue about what policies do we need to change? How do we need to engage all part of our community to make Charlotte safe?
How do I Zoom bomb that?
Yolanda.
I'm so serious. I need to Zoom bomb that and just be like, listen. Okay, I'm joking, but not really. But go ahead.
So Yolanda, I thought about you, right? So all council members had to nominate a person. So you and I appeared on Travis Town Hall. Then we appeared on the Town Hall, Travis P. Jackson.
We had that Zoom call. Yeah.
That Zoom call. And I heard you loud and clear, so you fussed at me. You said, all right, Smudgie, you got to bring back some changes.
It's all love. It's all love.
And that's the way I took it. So I went to the John Lear Bar Association, and I asked the president, Fatima, to be my nominee to serve on the board. I want that intelligent Black sister that know law, and I want her to say, these are things you need to change. So I made you proud, Yolanda.
I'm very proud. So I got 2 questions before we come back to the structure of city government. So Reese asked, I'm gonna put it up here. If someone seeks to join a committee to further their city involvement, where do they start? And is there a website that notes city committees and opportunities?
Yes.
Good question.
Outstanding question. So yes, Reese, there are over 41 different committees we like citizens to serve on. Website, Google Charlotte, City of Charlotte, City Council, and our website is listed when you Google that. And then look at those committees. But Reese, here's what you need to do. If you're interested in a committee like Neighborhood Matching Grant, for example, please tell your district rep, because you have to be nominated by someone on City Council. And then your district rep will work to get you 6 votes. As long as you get 6 votes, you can serve. Most of the terms are 3 years, and you can serve a maximum of 6.
Okay. And staying there for a second, what do you think the most important, that's a lot of committees, but out of those, what do you think that's the most important one that has adequate diverse representation?
Community relations and neighborhood matching grant. But I would say those are 2 of the most powerful ones. When you're talking about the new, what I call the new phase we in now, Yolanda, because of the tragedy of George Floyd, we in the equity lens, okay? It's our time for our community to demand equity. And neighborhood matching grant is about giving funding, giving grants to our neighborhoods. And I think a lot of time our community likes having that voice to say, we need to spend money Clinton Road. We need to spend money in Hampshire Hills. We need to spend money Beatty'sford Road. You see Shamrock and other communities getting that. So I would say neighborhood matching grant and community relations. They put on the Dr. Martin Luther King parade and activities, and they really talk about how can we improve racial relationships in our community. Okay.
And Jacotran asked, and this is a personal question for you, if a person wanted to be mentored by you in a political leadership, are you open to taking more mentees, and how would they begin that process?
Yes, sir. I've been fortunate. And so Dr. Justin Hollow, Al Alston, Mark Jarrell, now Terry Brown is running for state, Travis P. Jackson. I've been very fortunate to be proud to develop these young men to serve office. And so call me at 704-576-0429. 704-576-0429. That is my personal city cell. You have paid for that city mobile.
Repeat that one more time, because I'm going to put it in the comments. 704
576-0429. I think being a mentor has really been a mentee, and now being a mentor is my way of giving back. And also, if you're interested in me mentoring you, you are going to go through next level leadership. So before you call me, there's a leadership program in January that you will be going through.
Well, I guess you told him. All right then.
All right.
And that's and that's for anybody that's
action, baby.
Say what now?
So we all about action.
Absolutely. So okay, so let's get to what has happened recently, and we're talking about in terms of at least some movement in terms of police reform, but frankly widely criticized, because I think some people feel like it was just for example, we defund tear gas for the next fiscal year, but that didn't do anything to actually stop the use or ban the use of it.
Thank you.
Or where's the money going? That type of thing. Your personal thoughts on that, because I just think it was widely criticized for that reason, because it doesn't have teeth to it. Where's the reform, and where should we be looking for actual real reform?
June 2nd was a bad day in the city of Charlotte, Yolanda. Let's have a real conversation in the living room. There's no way we should turn gas on peaceful protesters. Peaceful protesters. And so I do think it's time to have a real conversation. And that conversation is, how do we build better rapport between CMPD and the African American community? What policy do we need to change? So about engagement. When do you use tear gas? We need to have a real conversation about more racial bias training. And so I think they will start on Thursday, having our citizen input group. And that's why we wanted citizens to be part of it. So many times we as elected officials, we operate in a bubble. And you had the same voice at the table. Yolanda, it's time for us to take off this Band-Aid and really fix this wound.
But why is it that it seems like for us to have a Democratic majority on council that it seems to be so hard to even get any movement, any real movement?
But because it takes real political will. And I think for a long period of time, you voters out there, just because James looked black, Smudge looked black, you have given me your vote. I say you need to have hold all of us accountable, particularly African American leaders. Some of us have raised over and over and over how I need to be more training. We need to be more diversity on CMPD. We need to have more community police officers. And so now, because of this incident and because of all the protests, people are saying it's time for a change in Charlotte. We got to reimagine and do this totally differently. And I agree, we did. So I'm not going to insult your listeners and your viewers. We did symbolic passage, what we did on that council night. They had 3 years of tear gas already stored. So for them, come on, let's have a real conversation.
Right.
So for us to feel like we did something for the citizen was not genuine. I think that the real conversation is going to start Thursday, because you look at the lineup of people we have on there. Corinne Mack is on there. We got we got Reverend Weary. We got some real people who gonna have real conversation with us and want real action. And so I was saying, I'm gonna give Councilman Victoria Watlington credit. The sister laid out a framework. She said, for 12 weeks, we're gonna work hard for our community. And after the 12 weeks, we're gonna really impact change. So fasten your seatbelt.
And I think that's important, because I think one of the other frustrations was with the there was the press conference about when all of this happened, about how there was going to be a committee or a review or something of the CMPD policies as it relates to the use of tear gas, or however we deal with passive non-violent passive protests, things of that nature. And the thing that we were seeing that was a common reaction: why do we need to study a directive? Like, why do we need to study that? Because it's one sentence, Smudgy. Like that day, I'm like, wait, what? So I went and looked up the directive, and it's literally one sentence. And it could be changed with like a couple of words. Instead of may, it could be shall, versus can, it should be will. Something that is more definitive. And so that's the you need a second.
Yeah, hold on.
Sure.
Thank you.
It happens. But that's the frustration, because
Yeah.
the whole directive is literally down to one sentence when it comes down to the use of OC spray specifically. And how do you define imminent threat? It's defined. I mean, all of those things are there. And it says, it doesn't say will not be, it doesn't say shall not be used, it says will not. Just change will to shall. You shall not use it unless there's an imminent threat to your physical body or to the physical body of someone else. Like this, but that's not happened. We're waiting on a study to tell us what we already know. So I think the frustration that I think a lot of people have with city council and some of the leadership is, but y'all could call a meeting tomorrow. Like a meeting could be called tomorrow to deal with this by ordinances and other things, but it hasn't happened. So what say you? What do we need to do? Who we need to roll up on?
So, real conversation, Yolanda. It's time to what I call me personally, the 5 Ps. People, protest, pain. Now it's time for policy and progress. We are in the last 2 Ps, how I'm trying to govern myself. And now it's time for the real policy work. You don't need another study. We don't need another study. I think it's time for us to raise our hand and vote, get information about what are the best practices throughout the country, but we don't need to study anymore. We don't need to take 30, 60, 90 days. So that's why the schedule laid out by Councilman Wallington, we're meeting every week. And then our first real change we hope to bring starts July 27th, when we can say, this is the first policy we're going to address. So we start off with youth programs. We hear from a lot of people. Once you help us get some of these, our youth activities to do that could be positive, keep them off the street. Yolanda, they telling the truth. So I sit around and I look, Police Activity League. Jeff Hood has a nice program. I can't tell you the last time we funded Jeff Hood's summer program. And Jeff is teaching more than football and basketball and soccer and baseball. He's teaching leadership. He's teaching about the law. He's teaching citizenship. And so we got to do more of looking where we can make immediate impact and stop trying to kick the can down the road by saying we need another study going to take 6 months. Folks are tired of that. I'm tired of that. Yeah.
And so what do you think one of the biggest things that needs to happen? Now, I know obviously you're having an opportunity to talk to various people, but from your perspective, what do you think the biggest thing we need to start thinking about now from a city perspective to really start to affect real police reform first? But we also got to talk about how the gun violence situation is escalating, because that's the direct impact on the justice system as well.
It really is. And Yolanda, I think we need to inform citizens too about the process, how it works. Because some people get frustrated. They say, well, seeing, police, you all arrest, but then they don't realize it goes to Mecklenburg County once they get in the jail, and then they don't stay in the court system. And so I see even PD officer arrest James at 9 o'clock. James go post bail. I'm back on the street 11:30 laughing. Then the citizens like, didn't you just arrest that boy off the corner? And so I think we have to do our part for as police officers. We got to get trust back, Yolanda. If we don't get trust back with CMPD and the citizens, it's going to be a long road for the city of Charlotte. So to me, the first thing starts with trust.
Is it your impression, and I know it's early, that the new chief is open to doing some of those things? Because I had Vicky Foster and Keith Way on the show, the issue kept coming back up of community policing and how that just doesn't exist anymore, and not in the level on the level that it used to.
Yolanda, so I'm gonna make a statement. I want you to hold me accountable. It's the city council. You all should hold responsible. So where if the chief is on board, he needs to get on board, and the city council need to drive the narrative to make sure everybody's on board. And I think that's what the community is looking for us as leaders. You hear our pain, you hear the changes. You need to tell staff to work with you to make changes. I give you a prime example. When I got elected in 1999, University Park community in historic Washington Heights used to raise money, Yolanda, to buy bicycles for the police officers who doing community policing. Yolanda, to your point, we don't have that type of collaboration anymore. We got to get back to that, because I think that's what our neighborhoods say. Valentine want to be safe, Batesville Road want to be safe, West Boulevard want to be safe, University want to be safe. I don't hear nobody raising their hand and sitting in Charlotte say, I want to stay in a bad neighborhood. So we got to make this entire city safe, but it starts with us, Yolanda, getting the chief on board, getting our city staff on board. And who drives it? The citizens and the elected official they put down there at city council.
And so what's the city manager's role in all of this for people who don't know?
Okay, good point. So the city manager's like the CEO. And so the policies that we vote on every Monday, then we charge Marcus to implement those policies to make it happen. And he clearly knows there's about two of them right now is high on our priority. Number one, how do we fund the I think we got 250 open police openings right now. So how do we recruit? How do we fund to get more police officers, more diverse police staff quickly? Charlotte is growing 100 people every day. We are experiencing growing pains. Number two is the youth program. We just gave $2 million to the YMCA. Why, Yolanda? Because we know this summer we need to have some youth activities for our Y. We know the Y that was in the urban community, they were not open, Yolanda, need funding. The city manager stepped up and said, from the COVID funds we received, I'm gonna put $2 million. So McCoy Y is open, Stratford Richardson is open, Johnson Y is open, Simmons Y is open, all because of the funding that the city gave to open up the Y.
And so when are the public meetings for city council for people who don't know? And actually Reese has another good question. Are they still on Mondays and are they all through Zoom? Or are they still actually public where you can still come and speak?
So they're every Monday and they're still virtual until probably I think after Labor Day. Then we're gonna go back in person. So go to our Facebook page and you can see them live.
And that's at charmec.gov or is it
charmec.gov? Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
And that's where they can see the actual meetings. Now, what if they want to chime in? Can they chime in or make comments or any of that?
So you have to sign up in advance to City Clerk Stephanie Kelly. You have to, and I don't know her number off heart, but someone shoot me an email or I will give it to you later on, Yolanda, so you can post that for me. But Stephanie Kelly is the city clerk. Call her and you can speak to any agenda item.
Okay. And so you said earlier that you felt like that the benefit for running at large versus staying as far as the district is concerned. Do you have aspirations beyond that, sir?
Well, I have. I'll put it this way: my aspirations are not going to Washington D.C. because I love my lovely queen. I like laying my head beside her every night. Nothing against Mohammed, but I'm not driving up to Raleigh Monday through Thursday.
He's laughing. Ain't see him, but he's laughing.
But there is another position that one day I will hope the citizens think that I'm qualified to lead the city.
And that's all I'm gonna get out of you, huh? That's it. It's fine. I tried it, y'all. I tried it. Okay, so I'm gonna bring Senator Mohammed back up here in just a second. But what would you say to someone, because you did have a question, obviously the question about mentoring and being a mentor, but what advice beyond that would you give to somebody who's given serious consideration to getting involved in city government, whether it's joining a committee or even running for office? What's the basic things that you think that are critically important?
They need to get involved in a civic group, whether it's the Black Political Caucus, NAACP, get involved in a nonprofit organization. And then I would definitely encourage you to identify a mentor in this community, like a Yolanda. I don't even try it. Al Alston. You know, someone, though, Yolanda can give them wisdom. But Yolanda, let me tell them this. Don't serve the city if it's all about your agenda.
That's right.
It shouldn't be about you. We on this earth should be a high calling. And so if your heart is not to improve lives of other people, don't fake the funk. Stay at
Mhm.
home, stay in your own little world. But if you're really serious and say, I have more to give, I know the
Mhm.
Lord blessed me with a unique talent I need to share with the citizen, then try to get involved in the community. Start working in your church. And then I would encourage you, though, to go through some leadership program. You know what irritates me, Yolanda?
What's that?
When people try to get leadership role, they don't even know how to carry emotion, don't know Robert rules of order. That
Mm.
just irritates me to no end, because to me that's fundamental number one. If you're going to be a leader, you got to know how to facilitate a meeting.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue and definitely a problem. What about voting records? How can you find out how council members are voting on certain
Oh, good
things?
good point. So you can always call Stephanie Kelly again. As a matter of fact, when you bring them home, I'm gonna pull up Stephanie Kelly's number and give it to you before we finish. And Stephanie Kelly will give you, here's a good thing, how we vote on each agenda item. And then when you run for a committee, Stephanie Kelly will also tell you what elected officials voted for you.
Okay. And so and that's on all things that are passed. Like that's where you can find, or she can help facilitate getting what a person's voting record is.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And all votes are, with the exception of closed sessions, are public.
All public. That's right. And
Okay.
then Yolanda, even closed session, it's a state law. The 90 days, it becomes a public record.
Interesting.
Yes.
Didn't know that. So
Yes.
even if it's closed at the time, 90 days later, you can find out how somebody voted on something.
And all the comments they made. Yes.
Interesting.
Oh, trust me, the media knows.
But this is information we definitely need to get out to people so that they know, because again, there's such a perception in terms of that versus the reality. So I'm going to bring Senator Mohammed back on, because I want to spend a few moments before we wrap up in
Okay.
terms of talking like the intersection between Mecklenburg County and of course Raleigh.
Okay.
And then wrap up in terms of what we need to do as far as bringing voters together, what we need to do for November.
Okay.
And beyond, because we have so much more that we need to do. So welcome back, Senator Mohammed.
Senator!
Councilman,
Sir,
how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Great. I enjoyed
Virtual high
listening to
fives,
you.
everybody. Virtual high fives.
I enjoyed listening to you. Thanks for all the guidance and mentorship and leadership and everything that you're doing for Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. Not now, but over the years, we really appreciate it. So
Well, Senator,
it's great to be on
thank you
here.
for being a strong voice for us. I know you're in the minority in your chamber, but I like the fight that you give to them every time you're up there. Dana Fenton always give us a report, who's on our side, what delegate is really working hard for us. So thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
And so let me
Absolutely.
ask both of you, because you both have unique journeys in terms of getting to either state senate or get into city council. And you both talked about how important it is to both, really, particularly you, Smudgy, in terms of talking about policy, and then you, Senator Mohammed, when we're actually enacting policy that's affecting everybody on the state level. What would you both say individually? And I'll ask this of you, Senator Mohammed, first. Of all of the things that are, because you all are down for the summer, if I'm not mistaken, right? Legislature is down until don't let me say it wrong.
So unless Governor Cooper calls us back, or the Republican legislature decides to call us back, we're not supposed to go back till the beginning of September right now. Or there's more COVID relief that's coming from the feds that we need to disperse to the state. So we just wrapped up about a week and a half ago for the short session.
Okay. So in light of everything that is happening, as far as people, waking up, frankly, to what is going on, as far as, issues that we need to deal with criminal justice reform. Senator Mohammed, what is one of the things that is most important that you think people should be looking at or watching for, and who they should, and when is it time for them to start knocking on the door, if you will, virtually, of their state rep or their state senator?
Look, what I will say is I heard Councilman Mitchell talk about this. Just because you look like me doesn't mean I'm going to vote for you or support your issues. And that's absolutely critical. So I would urge folks to go and look at your legislative records of your elected officials in your Mecklenburg County delegation. Do what the councilman talked about. Check how they're voting on council, because you need to know who's in your corner.
That's
not
right.
just on social media or what you hear from a third party there. The
Mhm.
types of bills and individual sponsors tells you where they're at.
That's right.
And that's something that's incredibly frustrating. I mean, we've talked about how the council is the majority on the city council. I mean, in Mecklenburg County, our delegation for the vast part is Democrat. We've got one senator, Senator Rob Bryan, who's a Republican, but our legislature is still heavily Republican. So we are in the minority party. But I mean, when we're talking about true criminal justice reform, we're talking about some of the concrete things that we can do. We're so fortunate that we have a Democratic city council, Councilman
Yes.
Mitchell, and
Thank
we're
you.
so fortunate that we have a Democratic county commission. And the reality
Mhm.
is, so many of these unfunded mandates that the legislature pushes, the county and the city steps up to the plate and does. But I will tell you, one of the things that folks are so frustrated, Judge Trotman, why
Mhm.
folks don't want to get out and vote, whether it's for Republicans or Democrats, is because they don't believe in us.
That's right.
You know, they think that a lot of these are just sound bites, things that you just post on social media, something that you're just trying to make fundraise from. And when we see the things that are happening in Charlotte, I mean, how many times do we need to hear, I can't breathe? How many times do we need to hear, please don't kill me?
Wow.
How many times do I need to hear, I'm about to die? You know, and that's the sad part. And I talked about this on the Senate floor. How many more Breonna Taylors? How many more Keith Lamont Scotts? How many more Ahmaud Arbery's have to die before whether it's our local government at city council or our state legislators step up and do something about it? These problems don't have to be solved in Washington, D.C. The North Carolina Senate and the House could step up tomorrow and take action. City council, Councilman Mitchell, you talked about it, hold you accountable, right? You can step up and take action tomorrow. I mean, cities like Seattle, Portland, Denver. We've talked about this, Councilman Mitchell. I don't think you were on the call, but we had this call with the delegation with our wonderful mayor and our chief of police and our new chief of police. And we talked about how cities like Portland, Seattle, Denver are taking steps to ban chemical agents for protests. And where they're actually looking at serious, significant threat before they use of force. And that's why I know a lot of our city council. I know our wonderful mayor. I know Councilman Mitchell. You know, we don't get to see each other too often, but I know what's in his heart. But I really want us to step up, especially in local government, because that's why these protests are happening. I mean, if the power was with me, Councilman Mitchell, tomorrow, I would make sure we did a lot of these criminal justice reforms. But the sad part is the Republicans don't even let my bill see the light of day.
No, that's true, Senator.
Like we talked about, which is so frustrating, which is why I'm coming to you as a constituent of yours too. Like, please make sure we have mandatory implicit bias training. I mean, Judge Trotman and I have seen these police officers. We've worked with them. And I will tell you firsthand as an assistant public defender, a lot of these police officers, even within CMPD, we've got some great ones, but at the same time, we have a lot of bad apples who are abusing the system. And our city council can step up to the plate and do a lot good with it, which is gonna put trust in people, put trust back in the community. So I'm really hoping, Councilman Mitchell, you step up and lead this effort for us to bring these true, genuine reforms soon.
And so, Smudgie, I'm gonna let you respond to what you think on the local level, but Senator Mohammed, I did want to put in the comments, where can people find the voting records of state representatives in terms of how they vote on certain issues?
So you can go to the North Carolina General Assembly's website, ncleg.gov, and you will be able to look up who your legislator is, whether it's your state house or state senator. You will be able to see all the bills that we've primary sponsored, co-sponsored, and you'll be able to see exactly how we voted. You'll also be able to see how many bills we've missed voting on. So you send us to do a job. So check and see who's been showing up. Check and see who's actually supporting bills to support raise the wage. Check and see who's supporting bills to actually restore master's pay for our educators. Check and see who's sponsoring and pushing for bills for criminal justice reform. Because these are the folks that we need to support. These are the folks that we need to continue to encourage. These are the folks that need your money and volunteerism so we can bring about genuine change. It's all the public record. Councilman Mitchell, you can't go online to see your voting records? I was just wondering.
No, we have not embraced technology to that level.
Okay.
But on that, let me give you Stephanie Kelly's number, Yolanda, because I promised to give it to you.
Yes.
Okay.
So please share Stephanie Kelly, 704-336-4515.
And what is her?
She is the city clerk for the city council. So that's when you call to sign up to speak at council meeting and to get the voting record on an agenda item that council has just passed.
Okay. Got it. So, Smudgy, back to you on the same level in terms of just dealing with criminal justice reform, and I imagine a lot of this is going to be dealing specifically with CMPD and other law enforcement. What can be done? And actually, it's a two-part question. Do you think that? Well, let me ask you in terms of what do you think needs to be done now, and how do we put pressure on our council members who are not stepping up, who are not speaking out, who are not voting, who are not putting the effort out there, even though they might be Democrats? Let's just keep it real. If you're not speaking up and you're not doing what you need to do, it's time to start putting pressure on folks. And since you don't have the ability of necessarily getting the public information online, we still can contact Stephanie to gather information to see who's voting, how they're voting, and start to put pressure on, like real pressure, to now step up and do something. Well,
Yolanda, let me take a step further. It's all right for people to get out here and talk. You need to see action now. We done did enough talking, and people like to do sound bites. You need to hold us accountable. What action are you going to do by the end of this month? What action are you going to do at the end of August? To me, you ought to have a 30, 60-day type of plan to check in and see who's doing what. Because we all can go on TV and talk about the problem. We need folks who want to consider a solution. So the first solution for me is the 8 can't wait. We need to look at those policy of the 8 can't wait and see which one can we implement by the end of July? Which one can we implement at the end of August? We don't need 90 days to deal with 8 can't wait. The other one, I'm asking my senator, and he's been very supportive, but we trying to give our Citizen Review Board subpoena power.
Oh, I was just about to say, do something with that. Ooh, okay, I'm sorry. I was about to step out, get out my seat. Okay, go ahead.
You told me real conversation, right? We're in the
living
room.
Absolutely.
And so that's the center of the point. Get out and vote and get some of the Republicans out the way so we can impact and give Citizen Review Board the power they need to really make some changes. And so those are rather our friends, but we got someone that say, we're not giving that to Charlotte. We're not giving them that power to the Citizen Review Board. And that we've heard loud and clear from the citizens to say, empower us more. And so that is one big, huge lift we need to do. But Yolanda, you know where I'm going. If we get Citizen Review power, a subpoena power for a Citizen Review Board, you talking about a change, a ripple change would take place in our city. I think that is a big moment that we, Senator, we need to work together and make a reality.
Absolutely. Councilman, Judge Trotman, if you don't mind, just a quick question. Councilman Mitchell, and again, I've never served on city council. Okay. I know enough, but again, I'm no expert like you. You've been on there for a number of years.
Yeah, they say I'm old as dirt.
But what I'm trying to figure out is, yes, Marcus Jones is the person who executes your plans, right? Yes. Your wishes. At the end of the day, our city council runs CMPD. You are the boss of Charlotte Police Department, right? So like when it comes to basic things like making sure every single police officer gets mandatory implicit bias training, right? Making sure that we're banning things like chokeholds, right? Making sure we're banning these chemical agents. Like why can't I'm just trying to figure out a way. Why can't city council say, look, these are our values, right? This is what we are going to implement. Either get with the program or we might need to find a new police chief. Because what was so disheartening to me real fast was when I heard Chief Putney saying, look, if there's any type of violence, we're going to use these chemical agents. But yet we saw these protests across the country. In certain cities like Portland, Seattle decided to use different ways to dismantle these types of protests, to break them up, to give a number of much more warnings, to tamp down the anger and the frustration that some of the folks were feeling instead of using these chemical agents. I mean, I just feel like...
No, Senator, and I feel your pain and frustration. So starting, I'm looking at the calendar, we have in our safety community meeting on July 21st, you're going to start to see some changes because we've heard loud and clear from people say, enough is enough. It's time to take action. You are all the leaders. We gave you our vote. It's time for you all to do something now. And so you will see some changes coming out July 21st, that early. And then we hope to get it on council agenda July 27th. Because some of the stuff is basic. But you know what happens, Senator? People talk and then they don't have what we call the political will to do the right thing.
Well, Councilman Mitchell, please, Judge Trotman's on here. Let us know who these folks are.
Okay.
I mean, I'm willing to call. I mean, I represent over 100,000 folks in Senate District 38. I mean, they've elected me. I will make those phone calls. I will have my constituents reach out. We will do our part to make sure that we get the votes that we need to implement these changes, because I do not want to hear I can't breathe anymore.
That's true.
You know, I do not ever want to hear it again.
Yeah.
And we will roll up in the Zoom meeting. We will find out that meeting ID and just Zoom bomb. And I'll send it to Senator Mohammed. We're going to be in the back like,
let's do it. Let's do it.
Now look.
And Yolanda, Senator, you know, the serious side of it is, it's been tough for a Black man for a long time in America. And George Floyd tragedy, I think just created explosion, created that type of frustration that's been built up in a long period of time. And I don't think we have the luxury anymore not to take action and do nothing. So the days of photo op, the days of nice flowery words, the day of posting on social media, if it ain't creating change, it's nothing.
And my other concern, Councilman Mitchell, you know who the President of the United States is right now. And Judge Trotman and I talked about the tone that this man has been setting. I mean, they asked him on the news the other day. I mean, African Americans are killed 2 to 1. And he said, so are white people.
Yeah, he said white people. White people. Oh, I saw it.
And I will tell you, and people are getting emboldened by that type of rhetoric, right? I mean, this is dangerous because police officers, again, not all bad. Don't want to say that because I've met a number of fantastic police officers. We have some great police officers, but then you do have police officers who will hear that type of rhetoric and feel like they have a clean slate to do whatever they want.
Right.
And so it's frightening.
And I'm gonna tell you, for a long period of time, I didn't pay a close attention to community safety because I wore the economic development hat for so long. So I'm about creating jobs, minority participation, women entrepreneurs. And then when I got on the committee, I started saying, well, if I don't have a safe community, I never get the CIAA championship tournament again. If I don't have a safe community, those 100 people that are moving in each day, they're going to stop moving in. And so a light bulb kind of went off with me. It's like, man, if your city's not safe, then Charlotte would never be the great city that we all are proud of to live in. Because people look and say, like we used to feel about Chicago. Oh, I ain't going to Chicago. 75 shooting over the weekend. I don't want that to become Charlotte. So now I'm putting my reputation out and telling all of your viewers, oh, I will be taking action. Senator, hold me accountable. And hopefully on July 27th, when you see some things on the city council, you say, oh my, they're going to work now. They're going to work for our community.
We're rooting for you.
So here's what I suggest, because the show's going to go on hiatus. So because you said it. So we're going to circle back in a month or so. Okay. And I'd love to have you both back. And we're going to talk about what we talked about tonight and where we are now, especially as we get closer to November. Now, with that, what is it that we need to do? Because Smudgie, you're not on the ballot. Y'all aren't up until next year. Senator Mohammed is on the ballot, but made it out of the primary. You're good. For people who don't know, because there's no opponent.
Well, I do. Well, the Republicans are running candidates in all the legislative races because they want us to use those resources. So, I mean, but for the most part,
there's an opponent. I shouldn't say that there's not an opponent. There is an opponent.
God willing, I plan to continue to serve you all in the North Carolina Senate.
I'm gonna just leave it at that. There's an opponent, but we can't take anything for granted. But
of course not.
But in all seriousness, November's right around the corner. We're only a few short months away, and my fear is, my legitimate fear, and you alluded to it, Senator Mohammed, is that we've gotten complacent. Like COVID has gotten us complacent because we don't campaign the way we used to. We're not out there the way that we used to. Everything is virtual, and people get distracted, and it's just not the same as far as that's concerned. And if the media is controlling the narrative every night at 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock, that these are the things that are important, my fear is that people are going to be complacent come November. So what can we do collectively to start to turn that tide? And what do you guys need? What do you all need from us in order to make this happen in the way that it should be, so that we get those seats, so we get those seats on the legislature, but then we also are able to hold city council
Absolutely
to task for what needs to happen within the next 12 months.
So for me, again, we've got on November 3rd, my friends, is election day. And we've got races all the way from the White House down to our courthouse. You got your governor up for re-election. You got your attorney general. You got one of our wonderful Chief Justice Beasley, a number of our judicial candidates, whether it's the Court of Appeals, Supreme Court, and our district court races. And then you have also our legislative and congressional seats. And don't forget the United States Senate. The Supreme Court's on the line. I know Justice Ginsburg was in the hospital recently.
She's out. She got out today. Thank you, Jesus.
Oh, she's out.
She got out. She's home. Because I prayed that thing last night. I was like, lay hands on the TV, like, Lord, come on. Hold on, sis. Just hold on. You got less than 6 months. Just hold on.
And that's the thing. And many of you all know these federal judicial appointments, they are for a lifetime. So the Supreme Court is on the line in 2020. So I want to tell folks right now some of the things that are easy for you to do. You can go to the North Carolina DMV's website to register to vote, and that's something new. So if you have a North Carolina ID or a driver's license, you will be able to register to vote online. A couple other things. We did pass House Bill 1169. It's called a bipartisan elections bill. We've basically reduced the witness requirement for absentee ballots. It used to be 2, so now it's down to 1. Please request absentee ballots. We do not know how this pandemic will be by November or in October. Every single vote counts. We had legislative seats that were basically flipped by under 50 votes. I think Rachel Hunt in the North Carolina State House won by 56 or 63 votes. I mean, these races are going to come down to every single vote. So make sure you're getting your absentee ballot, because God forbid if someone ends up getting COVID-19 at one of these polling sites, if they have to shut down that polling site, longer lines, if we don't have enough hours, it can create a lot of havoc. So go right now. You have till October 27th. You can request absentee ballots now because of this bill directly from the Board of Elections.
Is it the state website, or can people get it at the local website too?
So either way, you can go to the Mecklenburg County Board of Elections website or the State Board of Elections website, and you can request your absentee ballot now through the mail, email, and fax. So please do that. Yeah, I think it's the moral and the just thing to do, because this COVID-19, if you have it, you could be asymptomatic. You don't even know if you have it, and it could cause havoc at the polls. So go ahead and request that ballot. And again, lastly, I can't ask you guys enough. We're gonna need all hands on deck in 2020. That's right. If you can make phone calls, if you want to be a poll worker, if you want to make sure every vote counts by watching our elections and making sure nobody's right to vote is being suppressed, if you can donate, I'll happily take your contributions. I'm working hard to make sure we flip the North Carolina Senate. Go to Mohammed for North Carolina. Just Google it, mohammednc.com. Check out our website. All those contributions that we're raising, it is to flip the North Carolina Senate. Every single dollar counts. So please just do your part. The next decade is on the line.
And let me just reiterate, Yolanda, something to say on it. Even though I'm not on the ballot, because we're not on the ballot to 2021, but I've already agreed to canvass for the NAACP. I've already told the Black Political Caucus I'm going to be working the poll. We all need to have, as the Senator said, all hands on deck.
Absolutely. And especially, and I put this in the comments too, that you can request your you can request your absentee ballot until when?
October 27th, I believe, is the deadline. It's the Tuesday before Election Day.
That's
by 5 p.m. Yep.
Okay.
October 27th.
1 witness is only required now. It used to be 2. You can request it either by the state or the Mecklenburg County Board of Elections. Just Google that. And that's where you can request your absentee ballot. You can request it by mail, you can request it by email, and you can request it by fax. And request it anyway, even if you like us and I don't care. I'm gonna be in my mask and the whole hazmat suit and be at the poll, but you never know. So you just cannot take that risk, and it'll be better for you to have it and not need it, but need it and not have it. And I can't stress that enough. So that is in the comments. And obviously, if you're catching this on the replay, please, please, please share the broadcast anyway, because you all have given us such a tremendous wealth of information. But Smudgy, I'm going to hold you to it. In about a month or so, we're going to come back one-on-one, and we're going to have another conversation about where we are and what we need to, because the thing that I've always admired about you is that you will keep it real, for sure. And if you say this is what we need to do, you say it without any fear, and you say it genuinely. And that's what we need, because that's not what we're seeing 100% of the time. And we have to start thinking strategically in terms of what is going to happen in, as far as state government, but also as far as local government, because if people are not speaking for the people, then they're going to have to go. And, it's not personal. Yeah. It's not your seat, it's the people's seat. And if the people say it's time to go, you got to go.
You got to go.
You got to go. So that's the most important information, particularly as far as absentee ballots. Y'all make sure that you go ahead and request it. In fact, do it tomorrow. Heck, you can go to the site tonight. Go ahead and request your absentee ballot tonight. Have it, put it in a safe place that you can remember where you put it, so that you'll have it. Hey, just make sure you put it somewhere that you know where, if you need to go and get it, that you have it, because we none of us cannot stress how important this election is. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. I want to make sure that people know how to get in touch with you. Not a shameless plug, but I'll get to that in a second. Hosting a virtual fundraiser for Justice Beasley on July the 28th. From 6 to 7 p.m. It's going to be via Zoom. So go to chiefjusticebeasley.com/July 28th to register. You do not have to donate to register. You can still register, but it's going to be a great event. Unfortunately, we have to do it virtually, but we would rather do that and make sure. And if you missed that episode, make sure you go back and watch and you share that episode, because it was a very candid episode about her own personal history, but also about the history of the courts and where we are now. So Senator Mohammed, they can reach you at mujtaba.mohammed@nc. I got it right? nc.net. They can reach you there if they have questions. You guys are out of session now, but you're always accessible by email. And then Smudgy, james.mitchell@charlottenc.gov is where they can reach you. And then, of course, as far as voting records, which are incredibly important, ncleg.gov is where you can find the voting records of state senators and representatives. If you want to see their records, see the bills that the bills or resolutions that they've introduced, how they voted, and if they showed up, because that's important to see who's actually doing their job. And actually going to Raleigh. I gotta ask you this. I have to digress for a second. Now, how do you actually stay up there sometimes? Or are you literally just up and down the road?
Listen, I'm just
on your own car. Do you get a stipend? I just have so many questions.
So yes, you get mileage. You get a stipend. You get $100 a day for you to use for hotel or food if you need.
A whole $100.
A whole $100.
Okay.
So I oftentimes stay at one of the hotels or do an Airbnb. I'm not wealthy like some of our legislators who can buy a condo or have a nice little apartment or a house in the North Carolina General in Raleigh. But it's a 2.5 hour drive, so it's almost 6 hours of driving.
Yeah.
And the reality is, the most frustrating part is because they control the agenda. You never know when you're going to be there, how long you're going to be there. Sometimes they play games where they recess left and right, so hoping that you'll just leave and call it a day so they can pull a fast one on you. I mean, those are the types of tactics that this North Carolina General Assembly plays, and you have the opportunity in 2020 to end it once and for all.
Absolutely.
So Yolanda, one thing, please.
Sure.
Those who looking for a mentor, please give them my cell number. So I expect them to call me this week.
Okay, because I put your cell number in the comments, so they should be able to see it in the comments if they want to reach out to you directly. And Next Level Leadership, you said you're going to have a class in January?
Application will start October 2nd. They will be notified before Christmas, and it will start January 2021, be class number 3. Yes, ma'am. Excellent.
And so if people are interested in that, where can they get that information? What's the website?
www.nextlevelleadership.org.
Okay, all together, nextlevelleadership.org.
Yes.
Excellent. So thank you both so much. I definitely
you,
need to have you in
Thank you.
studio for a full show, complete with the pictures and the big fun that we always have in studio.
Okay.
The studio is open now. I'm just gonna spray everything down. We'll be fine. It'll be fine. We'll be 6 feet apart. We'll be across the table. It's socially distanced. But I definitely want to do that with both of you because your stories are so fascinating and it's so much more fun. We have time to really talk about your story through your pictures and you know, whatever topic. So I will definitely be in touch with both of you. So if you are tuning or catching this at the end, you can definitely catch the replay on the on our YouTube channel. You can just Google the Combo Pod Show. YouTube comes up, Facebook comes up, Instagram comes up. So definitely share this if you caught part of it. Obviously rewind, but a wealth of information from both of you. Just a wealth of information, and I appreciate both of you. Obviously, Senator Mohammed, if you're in District 38, will be on your ballot. Make sure that you cast your ballot.
That's
but
right.
Nonetheless,
we need
oh, we got you. Somebody else
folks.
is running against
You guys have
them.
been so loving and supportive. Appreciate it.
There's an opponent, but whatever. Anyway,
just make sure there's a lot of candidates on that ballot, on your ballot. Don't get tired. Make sure you go all the way down.
It is.
There's a number of races on your ballot.
Especially the judicial ones, which are always at the bottom of the ballot.
Yes.
That's a whole nother. We'll get to that. But for those of you joined us, and thank you for the wonderful questions. Definitely make sure you share the broadcast, pass the information on to people who you think that may be interested. The next week's show is the continuation of now what we're going to do, a recap of where we are in some of our major cases that we talked about very early on in the broadcast. We're also going to talk about, because we got this idea from the Redemption series of now what can we do as communities as we're welcoming people back into the community to actually give support to those who have been incarcerated. I think that's where we dropped the ball, because if there's no resources, what can we do as a community to come together to wrap our arms around people who need us the most as they're re-entering society to keep them from going back in? So we're going to have that conversation, but that will be next week. Thank you, gentlemen. It was a wonderful evening. It's so much information. I appreciate you both. Make sure if you didn't see it, then definitely reach out to either one of them if you have questions. And we will definitely be back for a follow-up to see where we are now as we get closer to November. So thank you, gentlemen, both. You were both awesome.
Thank you, sis.
Y'all have a good night. Okay, all right.
Thank you, Councilman.
Had to get in. All right, y'all have a good night now. All right,
good night. Take care. Bye-bye.